Welcome to This Week in Location-Based Marketing. My name is Rob Woodbridge. I'm joined by
Asif Khan from the LBMA.
Obviously, this is the podcast where we disseminate, determine what's important, and discuss the things that happened last week around location-based marketing. And this is a pretty busy week as usual. We're just going to jump right into it, Asif, because we're coming back from South by Southwest. Not us personally, but everybody is. Kind of the hangover week where everybody tries to figure out what went down and what's important. But one of these big stories that has been the bugaboo for the LBMA for a long time, you've been preaching this for a long time, came out of South by Southwest in the form of from Foursquare's mouth. Let's talk about this because this is big.
Yeah, so Dennis Crowley came out in his list of new features and comments and whatnot with Foursquare and said that one of the things that they were doing beyond kind of opening up their API a little bit further was announcing something that they're calling the venue harmonization map. And effectively, what they're saying is look, we've got a pretty big database of places logged into Foursquare. 14 million of them or so is one of the numbers I saw. And they're effectively what they're acknowledging, which is again something that you've said I've been talking about for a while, and that is that every one of these platforms, whether it's Foursquare, Gowalla, Google, Facebook Places, etc., everybody's got their own proprietary databases of places, and so I don't care what the place is. If it's your local Starbucks around the corner, Foursquare calls it something in their database and has a unique ID for it, and Gowalla has a different ID for that same Starbucks, as does Facebook and everybody else, and they're all proprietary. And Foursquare's finally kind of said, hey, this is a problem. We need to kind of make this information available to others. And so, we're going to create this this standard called the venue harmonization. I can't even say it. Venue harmonization map. And push it out there, and let people kind of match and tie into it, and so the problem I have with this. Okay, here's the problem I have with it. I think it's the intent is good. The acknowledgement that proprietary database around people's business listing information doesn't make sense, which is what we've been talking about for a while. Yep. Is good. But to say that Foursquare is, the biggest and the best, and therefore, we should be putting it out there, and everybody should be, coming on to ours, just doesn't make sense at all. Because it's, the reality is that there's so many out there, and in fact, some of them are even bigger than yours, whether you want to admit it or not. Dennis.
14 million has got to be is chump change, right? That's not a lot of locations.
Totally. And so, what we've been pushing for is a common place registry system administered by a neutral third party that everybody can participate in. So,
well, it strikes me that your point is so appropriate because they're not the biggest. And location and GPS stuff has been around much longer than Foursquare. I mean, they didn't invent this. There are companies that are long established that have been around here for a lot of years that have been mapping the world, and their data is probably a little bit more harmonized than even Foursquare. I've checked into depending on a location. Say, for example, Scotiabank Place, which is where the Ottawa Senators play. I've checked in at the front entrance at Gate 1, Gate 3, Gate 4, or on my way, 300 meters from the stadium, and it's allowed me to check in all those locations. So there isn't just, they don't even have their data harmonized yet, because there are 5 different locations to check into one spot.
And that's the problem when you have location listing information generated by users,
right?
And not verified, checked. Deduped by the actual business owner that owns that property, that venue, whatever the case might be. So I think that's one of the key issues here. So, again, what we've been pushing for at the LBMA is a standard place registry system, we call it. And the idea would be that, business listing information, the basic stuff, an address, phone number, for a particular venue, should be freely distributed. It should not be in proprietary databases. And ideally, the Googles and the Facebooks and the Gowallas and the Foursquares and everybody contributes that information into a common database administered by a third party.
Yep.
That third party takes the responsibility for verifying the information, and checking the accuracy of that data, because that's one of the issues that you just pointed to, that so that we don't have duplicate data in there. And then that same third party takes the responsibility of creating a common API, a single API, that third-party developers can use to access the aggregated information from all of the players in the space. And so, that addresses two parts to this. There are two parts to this issue. Part one is if you're a business owner, if you're a venue owner, you have a problem today, and that problem is that it's a problem that's growing almost on a weekly basis. In the old days, you would list your business inside of the Yellow Pages, and that would be the end of the story.
Yep.
In today's world, you have to update your profile in Yelp and Foursquare and Google and Facebook, and the list goes on, and it can become a full-time job. And quite frankly, you can go to Google today and you can search for local Mexican restaurant in whatever city you're in, and I can tell you in the top 10 listings or whatever, you're going to see a business pop up that's been shut down for the last 6 months because no one's gone to remove it. Is a business owner who's gone out of business going to take the responsibility to go pull their stuff out of Google? No, it's not going to happen, right? And Google doesn't do it either. So these are the issues. So that's the business owner has this problem of multiple places to list instead of a single registrar. And then third-party developers have an equally great problem in the sense that if I want to build an app that sources data from all over the place, I've got to go work with proprietary databases and 7,000 APIs instead of one API. So that's what we need.
Well, there's harmonization, and even a third issue that I would see that would land on this is that who owns that data? So it might be free and open what Foursquare is doing, but if you look at their end user license agreement, it says actually you don't have any rights to the data. So they want to accumulate it, they want to be the curator of it, but they ultimately own that data. And if location is eventually going to be dial tone, which it is, and longitude and latitude are the phone numbers ultimately for the dial tone, and those are freely available from everywhere. Then it's time to get beyond the actual location. We've talked about this forever, and having a third party, one location database ultimately of all locations on the planet, verified, solidified, and maintained is something that's very important. Because I don't see the big guys like Facebook. Facebook certainly not.
And it has to be done as a third party. Again, what we've been pushing for at the LBMA is tentatively we're calling it a global place registry system. It would work the way DNS works.
Yeah.
You want a domain name, you go to a registrar, you check to see if that domain is yet claimed, and if it's not claimed, you can register it, and away you go, and you register it with one party. And that one party contributes that registry information into a common system that everybody has access to. And there are lots of registrars. So Foursquare, Gowalla, Facebook, all these guys become registrars. You're a business, you list with one of them. Yep. And that information, by listing with one of them, is passed on to everybody else. You don't have to go and update it in 17 places.
I
it's
like
as
it.
simple as that. And that's what we think. That's what we at the LBMA think has to happen.
What about companies like we talked about Simple Geo and their open source data, location data? What about those guys? How do they play into this?
Yeah, I think they're trying to they're more trying to service the other part of the equation, the third party developer side, right?
Right.
And that's really where again there's two parts to that, right? It's the listing of the information, and then it's the distribution of that information freely to a wider audience, and enabling the development community. And I think that's where the Simple Geos have a lot of value to add, as far as I see it, anyway. So. Yeah,
and this plays well. I mean, there are companies out there that are the aggregators, like FootFeed, for example, that bring all of these check-in technologies into one. But it still doesn't mean there's got to be a deep layer on top of that says, okay, did you mean this Starbucks on this street corner, which is 100 feet off from where you're actually checking in, right? So
and the reality is Foursquare can say they've got 14 million, but what about Bing? What about Google? What about DMTI and Esri and all these guys who've got huge databases, right, sitting there, just waiting to be tapped into? So,
why wouldn't they use those ones like that? Why wouldn't you start with that?
Exactly, right. So, anyhow, there's a good notion, a good acknowledgement by Foursquare that this data's got to be freely available, but certainly
I don't. Be careful, but we got to be careful with the word free, right? I mean, I think that this data's got to be available because anything that resides in an API owned by a company like Foursquare, as we've talked about, is not free. It's accessible.
Sure,
right?
And that's a fair distinction. Yeah. I agree with that.
So. Yeah. So I mean, good. At least the conversation is happening, Asif, and it's going to take a Foursquare and the reach that Foursquare has in terms of media awareness and media savviness to be able to get this out. So this can only help you guys in becoming the DNS equivalent for location, which I think is a great idea.
Right.
We didn't intend for this to be an ad for the LBMA, but yeah. So going from location check-ins to video game check-ins, which is something. A little bit of background story here is that app developers and especially mobile game developers are having a hell of a challenge trying to actually create awareness for their games. Findability in these app stores is terrible because there are so many. Out of the 300,000 or 400,000 apps in the App Store, 750,000 apps for every device. Most of those are games. And some of them are really good, but some of them never come to light because they just can't be found. So, HeyZap, cool little idea.
Yeah, it is a cool idea, and it's kind of following a theme that we've been seeing in the world of kind of check-ins. Let's call it that. So all of those platforms, the Foursquares and over the last year and a bit, have been focused on checking into places. And then in the last few months, we've seen this kind of big wave of new platforms coming into the market that are focused on checking into content, as in television shows and entertainment, Alamiso and GetGlue and people like that. And now we've got HeyZap, here saying it's about checking into video games and a different kind of content. And so, again, for me, it pushes, the kind of the naming, or nomenclature side of things is it a check-in? Is it a place? It's not a place per se, in the sense that it's not a physical place, but it is a virtual place.
Yep.
So yeah, but I like what they're doing. I think it's a really interesting way to, as you say, kind of bring exposure to games that ordinarily wouldn't see the light of day. And they're doing it already. They've got 20 games signed onto the platform. Some of the biggest ones. I'm not a gamer myself, but from what I understand, some of the biggest ones, Bubble Buster.
So Android-based only right now.
Yeah, Android-based only. But Bubble Buster and X Construction, which are apparently two of the hottest games for Android, are on the HeyZap platform. And sort of like Foursquare, as you check into these games, you have the ability to earn badges as well. So they're kind of marrying some of that culture along with it.
I like this just in concept, simply because of findability, and it's one of the biggest challenges. Would I like to see this all over my Facebook wall? No. I tend to block that, saying that I checked into Bubble Shooter or whatever it is. I don't really care about that. But from a game developer standpoint, what's intriguing to me, there's a company here in Ottawa. It's a startup called Pretzel, and they do similar things, but they offer rewards. So every time it's the Foursquare game aspect of this is that when you check into a game or when you post a high score, you get rewards, and that kind of permeates through your social network as well.
Yeah, and so this is to kind of steal some of the marketing messaging from guys like Facebook Places, Facebook Deals. This is about social discovery, right? Yes. So this is just like Facebook says, hey, we want you to go around and discover interesting places to check out based on recommendations and other things. It's the same kind of premise here with games.
Yep.
Find a game that your friends are playing or others are recommending, from that perspective, and it's working. They've already, the stats I saw is for HeyZap is they've got 250,000 check-ins already, over 3,000 different games. So it's
all Android based. So there's
all Android based.
There's a massive market for Android based. So good on them. We're going to see much more of this, and this is that second wave. You're going to check into everything. I'm going to check into the type of tea that I'm drinking eventually, and there's going to be a consolidation at some point of all of these things into some kind of Uber super app that allows you to check into the world. And then what's going to happen? We're going to toss it all behind and actually go and socialize with real people.
And then we'll have the analytics platform that says, who got more check-ins, Red Rose or Tetley?
Exactly. And I'm drinking Yellow Label tea right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, we're going to get checking crazy, and then it's going to subside when we realize that we don't really have to check into everything. But, you know, for discoverability and social discovery, as you say, I think it's very important for the developers, because we want them to make money. We want them to be able to create more games, and this industry should thrive. That's what I'm hoping. So, Hey Zap goes after the social discovery. Good on them is what I say. Good on them. So no easy segue into this story, because you go from games to somewhat like an enterprise environment. But talking about users here, Telmap just exceeded 5 million users and 5 million maps. 5 million users, I think, is the
5 million users, yeah.
Stat that they're using.
You know, not a big story here. I think the story here is that, you know, Telmap is you know, part of that old guard of Maps GIS community that we've been talking about for, you know, the last couple of episodes. You know, sort of every week now. You know, we started a couple weeks ago talking about Navtech.
Where are they?
What they were doing, and where are these guys? And, you know, and they're licensing maps to all kinds of third-party iPhone and Android apps. And then we talked about, you know, you and I did interviews recently with TomTom and Pitney Bowes, Business Insights. You know, and similarly, you know, they're trying to, you know, they're waking up and saying, how do we play in this new world? And I think, you know, that it's that continued discussion now of all these guys. We talked about IBM the other day. Another episode ago.
Yep.
And how they're kind of partnered with Esri, and, you know, making information available to, you know, people that are, you know, working on, you know, municipal projects, and, you know, down in the pipes and digging holes and map, you know, knowing where where the actual stuff is in the ground, and that's all interesting. And I think so. What we're seeing here is Telmap is saying, hey, there's a lot of stuff coming out, you know, from our peers, saying that, you know, they're doing this, that, and the other thing. What are we doing? And we better get out there and say something too, to let people know we're still there. I think that's how I read this story, honestly, because, you know, coming out and saying we have 5 million users and we're growing at 15 million or 15,000 users a day. So what? Like, what is 5 million users? Like, that's not a big number in the world of a company that's been around for a long, long time.
And they're on 700 different devices, so they're on smartphones and feature phones, and so with 700 different kinds of devices, that really doesn't it doesn't, you know, 5 million users isn't that? I mean, it's enough. It's big.
Yeah. So, you know, that's I just got out my handy calculator here and punched that in. That's like 7,100 users per device. Yeah.
It's not a big story, but I mean, you're right about the big story being that these guys are now taking this industry seriously, but they've been taking this industry seriously for so long. They've just not consumerized it, so to speak, right? And that's what I think that we're seeing right now is them kind of not liking the fact that Foursquare and Google and Facebook are taking over this industry and looked at as leaders. And that's one of the things.
Now, I am being a bit facetious, right? So, you know, there is a little bit of a story here, and the story is that, you know, while that's 700 devices, 25% of that 5 million user base is iPhone.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, and they're growing like nothing on the iPhone platform. So it is happening. They are seeing some significant growth. They are moving into doing a lot of third-party licensing like Navtech. Yep. You know, the Android platform for them is growing as well. So, you know, they are seeing some significant growth there. But again, I think it's a little bit of kind of overstepping and saying, hey, you know, we're still here too, and just wanted you to know about it. So we put out a press release. So anyhow, there you go.
Well, that's good on them. You know, at least they're getting involved in. And again, here's another company that has many millions of probably more locations on their maps in their systems than somebody like Foursquare.
Absolutely. Where are they in the venue harmonization project? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Could it be that we use Telmap and Telenav and all of these other big guys and harmonize their data and then let them open it up? That's a really good strategy for those guys to remain relevant. Yeah. Even Yellow Pages.
Yeah, I think one of the problems on that front, you know, just to touch on that for 1 minute before we move on to the next thing is, some of the data that these big companies have is provided to them through government licensing agreements. Like, for example, take DMTI. They have, DMTI is based here in Canada. They have the best data probably in the country by far, as far as mapping data and demographic profile data as well, matched up against those postal codes and all that kind of stuff. And one of the problems is that some of that data, the StatsCan data, for example, they have restrictions on the distribution of that data that, don't allow it outside anywhere else, right? So, there are those issues to deal with, legal issues to deal with in terms of where that data goes. And I think that's one of the problems that we're going to get into as we start to move harder into this venue harmonization, place registry world. Of kind of commonly distributing that data. We do have to watch for the legal issues, and that's why I say that what we have to focus on distributing freely. And I'm going to go back to that freely word, because I know Foursquare is not there. But what we do have to focus on distributing freely is that base business listing information, the address, phone number stuff, should be free.
Yep.
Where all these companies should focus on making money is on higher level services. Analytics, who's checking in, who's going where, the predictive stuff, all that other data that Foursquare has, for example, as to who's going where and the recommendation stuff and all of that, that's where they should make their money. Not on what they're calling proprietary, which is, the basic business listing information. It's not proprietary. It's owned by the business.
You're 100% right. Yeah, my location is my location, and there's one thing that I do own while I'm actually in business there is my location. This is an impromptu. I just actually sent you a link to Telenav, who put out a. This is actually interesting, and it's related to this. And I'm throwing this at Asif blind, but they did has mined anonymous usage of data of 20 million subscribers of its GPS products, and it basically has I'll link to this in the show notes. It's not part of the show right now, and we're totally off script. But it's important because it corroborates this, is that you talk about they have 20 million users, anonymous users of GPS data, and this is not Telmap, this is Telenav, and
right.
It's basically an infographic that says where the heck are we navigating you? Tough title. But it gives the top business searches. It gives the top food chains or the top food types that it's going after. It gives a geographic breakdown about who's in what city searches more, and
right.
For example, who's more conscious about being at the pump. Gas prices. And this is just Telenav. This is a huge number of people. 20 million.
And that's my point, right? Is all of these big companies have massive databases like this and can do this kind of segmentation, this kind of predictive modeling, at so many different levels, right? And and I think that's kind of what we're all waiting for now is as marketers, as agencies, as media buyers, as planners, that world. This is where the real power lies, is in all the combination of all these, these location databases with all the demographic profiling stuff and the predictive analytics that come out of it. And I think there's, and that's where, the new world of location, the Foursquare Gowalla, world, is catching up, honestly.
Yep.
They're playing catch up. They think they're leading, but they're actually playing catch up.
Well, no, and that's it. It's no contest, but maybe that's where Telmap and Telenav and all these big guys have to play, and TomTom have to play. Is that
right? Exactly.
Yep. So this is going to be an ongoing discussion. Obviously, I mean it's relevant every day to what we're doing here. Not only with this podcast, but with the LBMA and a lot of these companies out there. But there's a lot of this data out there already to mine, looking for opportunities.
Yeah, and the other thing too is let's think about what is a location or what is a place, right? I mean. We just talked about checking into games and checking into content and checking into all kinds of other things. But, even, from the LBMA's perspective, we would say that a billboard, will be geotagged and therefore is a location. Yep. And so is that in Foursquare's database today? No, it's not. And so, how does that fit into the mix, going forward? Is a bus as it drives by a Starbucks a location?
Damn straight.
I think so.
Yep. Well,
right?
And it's like when you think about anything in location, it is absolutely a location. If it's geotagged, it's a location. If we're tracking it, it's a location. If you can actually manipulate what's on the side of the bus based on where it is, it's a location, right?
Absolutely, right. So this is, I think, and we're getting off topic now a little bit, but
I derailed the show about 15 minutes ago.
Just to bring that back to full circle. All I'm trying to say there is trying to go up and say, this is, we're harmonizing a venue map, back to our first story, and to tie that back to what we just talked about with Telemap is, yes, this location data is interesting as we see it today, but there's so much more to it. It's so much of a wider picture, and a lot of it is yet to be defined. So anyhow, let's go on to the next one.
Well, it's funny because we talk about macro data, and these massive databases of locations, and now we're talking about the thing that really is relevant to most users, which is your neighborhood, which is what's around the corner, what's relevant to you every day, and trying to bring some significance in the location-based services and marketing to neighborhoods. And this is where Neighbor Goods comes in. Great play on the name, great name. We've seen a lot of companies like this, but let's talk about Neighbor Goods. Neighbor Goods.
Yeah. So what is Neighbor Goods? Neighbor Goods is like a local classified listings for items that you would like to make available to others in your neighborhood because you're not using them all the time, or you'd like to make a little bit of money from them, so you can basically let people borrow stuff or rent stuff from you for a fee through a local listing service called Neighbor Goods. It's not the only one out there. There's Snap Goods. There's one called Share Some Sugar, I think it's called. Which is, I like that name as well.
That's a great name.
So these are interesting sites. I read an article this week about Neighbor Goods, and apparently as of in February this article was published, so it's not that old. And they had about $2.7 million worth of goods or inventory on the system, so it's significant. So the way this works is somebody goes and buys a snowboard because they can, and they snowboard once a year or whatever it is, and they've got this thing sitting there, and somebody else in the neighborhood wants to go snowboarding and doesn't have one, so you throw yours up on the thing and you rent it out for $10 and away you go, and that kind of thing. So it's it's interesting.
Yeah, and great features.
I think it's a good play.
Yeah, great features. What I like about it is that it handles the calendaring system for you and reminders and how long you book it for, and then it also does things like if you can't find what you're looking for, put it up on a wish list, and when it becomes available in your neighborhood, they'll notify you when it becomes available, when somebody puts that product up that you're interested in. So again, this is an innovation. There's a lot of companies out there doing this kind of stuff, but a unique twist on lending and renting. I can't wait till I can actually just put a price tag on my car. Say, hey, you can rent it for the day and check in and check out and go.
Yeah, well, that would be interesting, and so but these guys have done a good job of kind of getting the brand out there a little bit too. I know Microsoft gave them a BizSpark Accelerator Award at South by Southwest. They've gotten awards from Ad Age as well, so they've definitely garnered some attention, and I think they're going to do well in this space. I think it's a good space.
Well, I like it. Neighborgoods.net. Neighborgoods.net. I love it, especially because it brings the neighborhood together, and if you can use it, and if you're not using it, like your exercise bike in your basement, get rid of it. Do it this way.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's it.
And all these guys are going to be competing against all the classified ads that are out there. So it's very disruptive to the local newspapers, like the local newspapers, your neighborhood newspapers, I think as well.
Well, where's Craigslist in this? That's what I want to know.
Well, Craigslist is a good business model so far, right? But I'm talking about like whatever your local report, right? That publishes this kind of stuff. So they should be involved in this heavily. They should be shifting over there. So neighborgoods.net. And what's better than your neighborhood selling your stuff to your neighbors or renting it out or lending it, but then finding a pub in your neighbor and in your neighborhood, and ultimately that's what Tabbed Out does, or that's where Tabbed Out plays. But let's talk about what they did in Austin at South by Southwest.
Yeah, so Tabbed Out is an interesting. It's a mobile app. Basically, it runs on iPhone, iPod, Android. Most of the devices, not BlackBerry, I don't think. Effectively, what Tabbed Out is enables you to discover locations, bars, restaurants, in particular is kind of what it's focused on. But as the name implies, it's about paying your tab, without actually giving a credit card or debit card over, or pay it through your mobile device. And so it's really interesting. And what they did at South by Southwest is they partnered actually with Jywire, who we've talked about before, who has a really cool local ad delivery platform.
Yes.
And they basically together worked on this, Austin bar crawl, pub crawl, whatever you want to call it, and you can go around and discover these local bars in the crawl, and go and have a drink or have a bite or whatever it is, and as the next one was coming up, you didn't have to wait, to have a server come over and hand you the bill and all that kind of stuff. You could just tab out and move on to the next one, all through your mobile device. So simple, clean, easy, mobile payments.
Well, I had the great privilege last October to interview Rick Orr, who is the CEO of Tabbed Out, and what struck me about what these guys are doing, is just so ingenious. He said he was inspired because of bad service to make this thing. So he could just, instead of waiting for a waiter or a waitress or a server to come in and settle up, he just wanted to get out as quickly as he could from a busy bar. So their premise is really, they tie right into the POS systems, the point of sale. And so when you log in with their app, it's also great for those who are listening about business. Instead of going after millions of restaurants, go after the 7 dominant point of sale systems. Those are your customers. Forget the restaurants. Go after the POS. So you can literally log into your tab, your bill, in the POS and settle it with a credit card on file that's on your device. You never have to actually hand over a credit card.
So it's kind of like PayPal for restaurant, right? I mean, that's effectively what it is, right? Yeah. It's PayPal for restaurant or bar, through your mobile device.
And then adding that advertising layer for bars around the neighborhood. I think that's even brilliant, like a pub crawl.
Exactly. And I think that's where Jywire plus Tabbed Out makes a ton of sense.
Awesome. Rick Orr, if you're watching this or listening, I'm giving you 2 thumbs up. Like that story. Like that story a lot. Well, that's it. That's it for the stories. Now we get into the fun part, which is the product of the week. That's our sound effect. We don't have any sponsors yet. So this is an interesting one for the product of the week. Bizzy, BIZZY or BIZZY .com. Bizzy.com.
Yes. Yeah, so not a ton to say about this. This is an Android and iPhone app environment. It is another local recommendation engine, I'll call it. We've been talking a lot about recommendation engines, and it definitely was one of the big trends coming out of South by Southwest.
So, who's going to invent the recommendation engine? Huh?
I'm leaving that to you, Rob.
Okay, there's the business plan right there. Need to know what recommendation engine to get? Oh, I got a recommendation engine for that.
All right, yeah, so Bizzy. I think one of the key things here, and there's really nothing unique about it, but I do like how they, the UI is really nice on this platform. It's really clean and simple, and what they really focus on is not the check in, but the check out.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you go to let's say you go to a restaurant, and you have your meal, you do your thing, and as you're going, as you're leaving, you check out of that place and you leave tips, recommendations for the next guy that's coming along behind you. And so it's focused on this checkout. It's focused on kind of leaving some kind of a rating, let's call it. So I think one of the obvious competitors here would be somebody like a Yelp for sure in this space. It does have some pretty nice integration with Facebook and Twitter as well, so they streamline that kind of integration. So they are pushing those recommendations out. But nice clean little interface.
Yeah, Bizzy.com.
Bizzy.com.
Get busy. That's what their tag is. It's still in beta, but yeah, they seem to be getting a little bit of traction, and good on them for the checkout. So we've got the pre-check-in, the check-in, the checkout now. What we need is now
once you've checked out, then you check into content when you get home.
Exactly.
Television.
But what we need is now the clairvoyant check-in.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So the places that you will be tomorrow, checking in tomorrow. So busy is the product of the week, and for our resource of the week. Interesting play here, right? I love when you bring these things up. This is something called Internet Retailer.
Mostly because you can't find them.
I can't. Well, most of the time I can't, but I found this one. You didn't stump me on this.
All right.
Yeah, this is the 500 guide, the Internet Retailer Top 500 report. Let's talk about this. There's always a cost with this, but...
Yeah. So these guys, Internet Retailer, they do a top 500 report in North America and a top 300 in Europe. And I think the only thing I really want to say about this is when they contrasted the two studies, they found that 22% of the North American retailers, predominantly U.S., but 22% of the North American study had a mobile commerce site. So they had a mobile web offering. And that was higher than the number of North American retailers that had a mobile app.
Yeah.
Versus in the in Europe, they had 19.6% had a mobile site, but almost 25% had an app. So there was actually more app going on in Europe and more web going on in North America. So lots of discussion to be had about that. I would guess. And the only thing I could say about that is another study I saw recently said about one in three mobile subscribers in Europe are smartphone enabled.
Yeah.
So that's much higher than is the rate in North America at the moment.
Like 22 or 23%. Yeah.
Probably helps answer some of the question as to why there's more app going on over there than there is here.
Well, we are addicted to our browsers, right? That's That's one of the big things is that we are absolutely addicted to the browser, and it's why this conversation always comes up: is it HTML5 versus native apps?
Yes,
we hear that in North America only because we're hooked on our browsers.
Yeah, and I think too, up until very recently, the last couple of years, we have had being kind of home of the BlackBerry over here. We haven't had a lot of BlackBerry apps available or any of that kind of stuff. And so anything that was available to us was over the web. And certainly, BlackBerry was well entrenched in North America and less so, in other markets, in the European markets, where you got Nokia and Symbian and other things, having a much bigger role. So it's understandable, but anyways, Internet Retailer Top 500 report and the Top 300 European report are definitely worth taking a look at just to see what's going on in the retail community as we contrast app versus web and location.
Very cool. So we'll obviously link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, I think it's at internetretailer.com/top500/online. You'll be able to find it there. But if not, just come back to the site and we'll link it up. And
definitely.
That's it, man.
And just a little shout out to Mashable too. I know Mashable's got a location survey going on right now. Very quick survey, takes like 1 minute. It's 4 quick little questions. Just encourage people to go fill that out because the more data we have, the better.
Absolutely. So head to Mashable. We'll link to that as well if I can find it. You throw these at me like this.
I'll flip it to you.
Mashable, what's that? A website of some sort? It's
a
big thing. Yeah. So for those of you guys who are still listening, still watching, love some feedback. We're getting some great feedback from all of you guys that are doing this, but more just makes us feel so good. We'd appreciate hearing back from you either at the LBMA's website at thelbma.com or on Twitter at thelbma, or you can hit me up at Rob Woodbridge or at untether.tv. Just let us know what you think about what we're doing here. We really appreciate the encouragement and words of wisdom, so keep them coming. And, we'll be here for, this is episode number 17. We're just continuing rolling here.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Asif. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll catch you next week.